die Verbrennung der Amerikaner.
What is up, my beautiful mates of YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to be doing top 5 underrated designer fragrances. And I gotta say, I'm obsessed with this look at the moment. There's just something about it I absolutely adore. It's that over-the-top 1980s vibe / early 1990s sort of like professional wrestler vibe. I think it was like Rick Sanchez is Never Wrong, one of the mates here on YouTube. He was like saying it was like Bret the Hitman Hart, and I'm like, what an awesome comparison. But anyways, this video is actually inspired by Ash from Gents Scents video that he did today on top 10 worst smelling cheap fragrances. One of the fragrances I'm highlighting on this list was featured in that video because I actually think it's quite a bit underrated. But before we get into that, I will be talking about my fragrance of the day, and that is Zadig & Voltaire's This Is Him. Pepper, grapefruit, incense, vanilla, and sandalwood. It's an incredibly rich, smoky, smooth, creamy fragrance. In my opinion, it is an easy 10 out of 10. You only need about 2 or 3 sprays of this. A little goes a long way, and there's just something about it. This isn't going to be for everyone. This is a dark, edgy, sort of rock and roll type of fragrance, so it's not going to fit everyone's aesthetic. To some people, this would be maybe even a 0 because those notes of like incense and sandalwood, they make this quite smoky, and not everybody loves the facet and the accord of smoke. But to me, this has been in my top 3 favorite fragrances since I've been recording these videos on YouTube. You can pick it up for under $80 Australian, and to my nose at least, it is a perfect 10, an easy 10. There's almost nothing that could improve this fragrance, except Zadig & Voltaire kind of almost did when they released Just Rock, which is pretty similar to this, except replace some of the vanilla-y notes in this with patchouli, and you've got a good idea of what that smells like. Just Rock is also an awesome fragrance. I still think I prefer this one ever so slightly, but I know to some people they would probably prefer that just because of that decadent patchouli note. It does come across as a little more darker and mysterious just because of that patchouli note, but this is the perfect convergence between that smooth, creamy vanilla, the incense, the sandalwood, and that punchy grapefruit pepper opening. It's an incredible fragrance. So, we're going to be starting things off with the fragrance mentioned by Ash from Gents Scents. I think his name is Asher. I know, he seems like a top bloke. And that is Karl Lagerfeld For Him. Now, he thought it was a pretty generic smelling fragrance, and I've got to kind of disagree with that. When I think of generic, I almost think of like a blue fragrance like Dior Sauvage, although Dior Sauvage is a great smelling fragrance. There's just something about that sort of school of fragrances that comes across as more generic to me than something fresh, spicy, aromatic, and powdery like Lagerfeld For Him. I'm just gonna spray it. I just don't get the generic vibe. Like, the powderiness combined with that fresh, spicy quality with those aromatic notes. It smells pretty damn nice to me, and it smells sophisticated and classy. I really love the way the violet is presented here. I think it smells fantastic. Performance is solid for this one as well. Perhaps it's just the way those powdery notes mix, like the violet mix with the more aromatic notes here. I can understand why it isn't as popular as something like Dior Sauvage, but to say that this is like generic, I just don't understand that, because here in Australia, I never smell anything like this out in the wild. To my nose at least, this comes across as sophisticated, classy, elegant, a little mature even, whereas I'm always smelling Paco Rabanne's 1 Million, things like Dior Sauvage. Those, to my nose, come across as generic in comparison to Lagerfeld For Him. I can also appreciate how the lavender is presented in this. It comes across very masculine, which, as a floral note, it's kind of difficult to present lavender in a masculine way, because most people, I think, would associate it with essential oils, aromatherapy, and those are typically sort of like a women's area, which I disagree with. You know, I think anything can smell either masculine or feminine depending on how it's portrayed. Yeah, absolutely adore this fragrance. Love Gents Scents content, but I have to disagree. I think this is pretty underrated. Next up is a Burberry Brit Rhythm Intense for him. This one, pretty solid, pretty solid. What I love about it is that, I'm gonna spray this one on my hand, is that it almost comes across like a more youthful version of Gucci Guilty Absolute. It's leathery, fruity, super punchy opening, like a haymaker. You've got almost a Dior Fahrenheit vibe to this one as well. Floral, huge notes of leather here, touch of fruit. Smells absolutely incredible, and I got this for $30 from Chemist Warehouse here in Australia. I should also mention that Lagerfeld for him can be found for less than $50 Australian online. I would recommend getting the bigger bottle of this just because I think that's only about $15 more expensive for the 100 ml. This smells absolutely amazing. The leather note in this is to die for. It truly is. I almost wish I wore this today instead of Zadig & Voltaire's This Is Him. But that is a 10. I wouldn't call this a 10. Performance on Burberry Brit Rhythm Intense is very solid. We're talking about 9 hours plus. And if you spray it on a t-shirt rather than a jacket, for example, I find that it lasts even longer. 3 sprays, you can get 12 hours of performance. I keep wanting to smell it, so that's how you know it's a fantastic smelling fragrance. Very, very masculine. Very, very rock and roll. Similar to This Is Him as well. Highly recommend this one. If you're a fan of Gucci Guilty Absolute and Dior Fahrenheit, but want a more youthful, dare I say a more wearable version of those two, check out Burberry Brit Rhythm Intense for men. Next up is, let's go with the cheapest fragrance on the list, Nordica Classic. You can pick this one up for less than $15 Australian. What I love about this fragrance is that it smells like fabric softener and laundry detergent. It is the closest representation I know to that fabric softener laundry detergent style of fragrance. It smells like clean clothes, and I've said that a few different times here on the channel. If all you're after is something that smells more neutral, but not so neutral as like Molecule, for example, this is a great option. Nordica Classic is the type of fragrance for somebody that dislikes fragrances. It smells of almost nothing else. You're just going to smell like you're wearing clean clothes. And if we're being honest here, the sexiest fragrance is clean clothes. You just smell super hygienic. And this I would recommend over any body spray, over any Lynx or Axe or Rexona or anything like that. Obviously, wear an antiperspirant if you perspire quite a bit, especially an antiperspirant without aluminium salts. So we're talking about the brand Schmidt's. That's my brand of choice, the charcoal and magnesium one. It's got a very neutral fragrance. It's not going to interfere with other scents. But Nordica Classic is for the person that wants to smell like they're wearing clean clothes. Performance is 5 hours at an extreme push, but we're looking more like 3 to 4 hours. But this is something that's not going to overpower you. You can reapply this multiple times. It smells fantastic. You're gonna get compliments for it just because it makes you smell so hygienic and clean. Next up is Vince Camuto's Virtu. This is a unique fragrance because it smells like leather. Vince Camuto Virtu is similar to Gucci Guilty Absolute in that it's a leathery fragrance. However, unlike Gucci Guilty Absolute, this doesn't smell particularly medicinal. It doesn't smell like decaying leather or anything like that. It smells like a classy, sophisticated leather mixed with a lot of damp green notes. It's very natural smelling. Let me just spray it here. Atomizer is a bit weird though. Yeah, I get leather, I get some aromatic facets, and I get a lot of green accords here as well. to my nose, it smells like if you've ever been in a rainforest or out bush right after it's rained, and you can smell that sort of damp, sort of foliage smell. It smells almost exactly like that. You'll know what I mean if you've smelt this one before. It smells like wet rainforest combined with leather. It's a very unique fragrance, and you can pick it up here at Chemist Warehouse and Priceline for about $55 Australian. However, at Priceline, pretty recently, Vince Camuto Virtue and the blue one, they were on sale for, I think that's just Vince Camuto Homme. But yeah, they were on sale for $40 Australian. If you're after a leathery scent that has really realistic, natural smelling green vibes to it, definitely check this one out. I think it's super unique. It's not a 10 or anything like that, but it's underrated. It never gets spoken about. And I just think it smells great. Performance is about 8 hours on this one, depending on how many times you spray it. And lastly, I don't know whether to pick Jacques Bogart Club 75, which often gets compared to Jazz Club, or Jacques Bogart City Tower, which often gets compared to Bulgari Black. You know, it's got that leathery, vanilla-y, almost rubbery, smoky scent. Let's go with City Tower. If you're a fan of Bulgari Black and want something that isn't discontinued, this is a great option. It's very unique. The only thing that even smells remotely close to City Tower, like I just mentioned, is Bulgari Black. If you're a fan of that vanilla, leather, smoky sort of fragrance, smoky sort of vibe, then City Tower is probably going to be the fragrance for you. It's pretty sophisticated, but it's also a little rock and roll as well. I just associate the notes of leather and smoke with rock and roll. You know, obviously because of leather jackets and cigarettes and whatnot. But you can find this one on eBay here in Australia for less than $40 Australian. Performance is exceptional for the price at over 8 hours. The one caveat is that if you've already got Bulgari Black, then you probably don't need City Tower. However, if you're scared that you're going to run out of Bulgari Black, or if you don't want to use all of your Bulgari Black, you could replace it with City Tower and nobody would be able to tell the difference really. They smell virtually identical to one another. I think they both smell great. They're very rock and roll, but they've also got a slightly sophisticated edge to them as well. They're unique. They're not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to get on board with those scents, but I think they're great. If you've ever worn any of these fragrances before, let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. And until the next video, my name is Aussie Marcel, and I'll catch you guys around.